Every mother and father gaze upon their children and know their deep secret. They have a favorite. In War Thunder, we know who the snail's favorite child is. It's Ground RB. Air RB is probably the next in line in terms of love, but between these two, there is little attention left for the last one, which is Air Sim, or what I would like to call the forgotten game mode. Today, we dive into Air Sim in War Thunder and do a breakdown of this game mode. Let's remind ourselves that even though War Thunder has already infected every single computer in the world, it has changed quite a bit over the decade. What it was like then is very different now. The snail has pretty much modeled every single jet that has existed between the Sabre and the F-15 in a pretty short time frame. I have been very surprised how Air Sim, with very little love, has developed into a fun game mode, so let's talk about it. In full transparency, I am a content creator for the snail, but I'm going to be both positive and critical of the game. I play a lot of The Sims, and not just one, so this is an impartial take. If this is your first time here, this channel focuses on multiplayer sim gameplay, so if into that, please subscribe. When most people think of flying War Thunder, they think of this. And this is awful. Air RB is like the snail's Skinner box, where they throw in a random group of players and see how long they can last for. It'll make your brain melt. Air Sim, or Enduring Confrontation, is different. It's a whole other game mode for aircraft in War Thunder, and it plays more like a mini campaign instead of a single throwaway lobby like Air RB, which means you can join a fresh one or one that is already ongoing. Battles last up to 3 hours. The basic premise is simple. Each team has a set of number of tickets. Reach 0 and you lose. How do you lose tickets? There are several types of objectives in the campaign, and this is where the magic begins with Air Sim. This is not a blender of players together in a short 5-minute match. This is like a campaign where players are faced with trying to win different objectives. There are the really big ones, like taking out airfields or carriers. These take time and multiple runs in order to whittle down the spawns, so it is no longer viable for the enemy to use. There are frontline engagements that pop up where you can engage the ground units and give your side an advantage to win out. There are bombers or recon planes to intercept or escort. There are combat air patrol zones that you can fly into and capture over time. These all act as good ways to herd cats and make points of interest on the map, because securing these objectives as well as shooting down enemy planes all contribute to the overall effort to burn the enemy's tickets. It's a very simple formula, but it works, and it works so well in comparison to what is in the rest of the market. Let's take a step back for a moment. Enduring Confrontation offers things to do out of the box without any sort of community action. No server code to develop, no new mechanics to learn, and no need for a server community to will itself into existence. It is just a straightforward experience that offers objective-oriented gameplay, and that's what makes it so appealing. Along with that, as a player, you have some control over this, because you can decide which countries are involved and in what era it's played. You do not queue for Air Sim. Instead, in Air Sim, you are in control of your experience. In Air Sim, you decide which lobby you want to join, or better yet, you can create your own. Every campaign has its own BR bracket that is dictated by the players who created the lobby. This bracket works off the calendar, and it has 4 different templates that shift every few days. This is really important to know, and one of the big things that makes Air Sim really interesting. These brackets dictate what planes are allowed to fly in them and against what. They each offer a really different experience. In Air RB, you are used to being up-tiered or down-tiered. In Sim, you are conscious of what sort of bracket you are playing in and what you are using in that bracket. The bracket system is also public, and you can plan around it. This is what it looks like. The brackets change, like I mentioned, so you can get matchups that look like this, and the most advanced plane is this, but the next day the top of the bracket may change to this. In my opinion, this has been really neat because you can plan around it. You aren't going to get thrown into a match where you are the worst plane. You can decide to play where your plane feels really good. Question is, what is the best bracket to play and on what map? The maps are all different sizes. Some are larger than others. The more modern you go, the larger the map you need. So with this in mind, I think that the early to mid Cold War bracket are the best ones to play with in War Thunder Air Sim. Why? 2 main reasons. First, they offer a really unique experience. The Cold War is interesting because it's a big mishmash of competing designs from countries that were coming out of World War II, trying to make sense of jets and new advanced systems. Classic planes from Western Europe, like the Mirage 3, the Jaguar, and the Super Intendard, are present. The Soviets with the fitters, fishbeds, and floggers are all present. And then you have the Americans with the classic F-105s, Panthers, and Phantoms. Yes, some of the other games like DCS do Cold War, but it's covered in pockets. Simply said, there is no other game that exists where you can fly some of these planes in a PvP simulator-like environment. The second reason is that with the Cold War planes, you get into supersonic air travel, and you get into weapons that mostly follow the theme of crude Fox 1s and rear aspect missiles. This just happens to work really well with the size of the maps in War Thunder Air Sim. The maps are generally 64 by 64 kilometers. There are some larger ones that are 86 by 86, and then there are the really big ones which are 128 by 128 kilometers. Now, at first glance, you may think that most of these maps look really small, but we must think not about the size, but rather the density. In the early to mid Cold War, it is pretty typical that you will get a match that will be 5v5 or 10v10. Anything bigger than that is pretty rare. So if you think about 10 enemies in a 64 by 64 play area, it's actually not too bad. It feels like you have the space to breathe and to have intimate fights without being interrupted constantly. This stands in stark contrast with the other sims, which tend to strive toward realism, but ironically get crushed under their own weight. With server communities and other games needing to stay populated, they want to increase their player count, so they maintain the top spots on the server browser. This is really important real estate for them to hold. This keeps their community growing, but it also makes the player density quite high, and this makes a very realistic sim really feel overly congested. War Thunder Air Sim doesn't have this problem. It's just a standard game mode, so the players naturally spread each other out. This seems to work out really well in the early Cold War matches. The size of the maps combined with the speed of the planes and the range of their weapons just sort of really works, and I'm not sure if it's on purpose or if it's by accident, but I'm not complaining. I'm just here to say what a lot of us on our Discord have been feeling. I would say that in a match around 90 minutes or so, I typically get about 11 kills, so that is on average a kill every 8 minutes. And to me, that doesn't seem like an unreasonable pace. Okay, so in summary, we have a unique expansive plane set that may not have the most fidelity modeled, but it is equally applied across the board. We have a lobby system that allows you to be in control of your destiny, and the matches feel really good, especially for Cold War. Firstly, IFF is a total mess, and it is my number one pet peeve about AirSim. One of the good things about War Thunder is also a bad thing, and that is the very comprehensive plane sets, and this disproportionately impacts some of the BRs more so than the others. For example, if you are playing any other sim and you are flying a P-51, you are not going to shoot at P-47s. This doesn't apply at War Thunder. There are premium German P-47s, so it's totally possible that you can have historical countries in a match and have German P-47 flying around, and which confuses everyone. This makes things kind of messy, and for that reason, I avoid World War II air sim entirely. If I play World War II, I will do it in an IL-2. The Kolovar planes that have radars with IFF can sidestep this problem, mostly because you get IFF readouts on your radar. The issue is that because the radar's modeling in War Thunder is surprisingly fleshed out, it is really hard to get an IFF readout on planes when you're on a furball because of ground clutter. So this turns into a guess at games, and sometimes you just won't know if a plane in front of you is an enemy or not until you get super close, where the blue dot appears over them to signify that they're friendly. People all have their different preferences, and one of mine is that historical plane sets are maintained. So I personally find this point particularly grating. The problem seems to get worse every time the snail adds more premiums. For example, the British tree looks like it's shaping up to have a sub-India tree. The Indian MiG-21 is on the British side. So this makes confusion in the Cold War scene. Next bad reason. Due to how quiet AirSim is, a lot of brain-off grinders play. They just take off and bomb air bases. Every once in a while, you will join a lobby where players are trying to keep it as a PvE space and AFK bomb bases to grind their planes. This makes for a really boring match, and it's not really immediately obvious to you if this is taking place when you join a lobby. This is something to be aware of, because if you are new and join a lobby where nothing is happening, it's because of this. And if you run into it, you should just leave the lobby. Lastly, the game mode is clearly not the center of attention. It almost feels like by accident, but AirSim, even with so little attention, probably offers the most straightforward and out-of-the-box combat flight sim experience as a game mode, and that's what makes it so tragic. They have done very little to do more with it. It's possible to get World War II AI units in a Cold War match. Helicopters are completely excluded when there is probably a really good way to incorporate them into the campaign. They could certainly add more AI units to reflect more modern and capable weapons and higher BRs. There is a lot that can be done to take this to the next level, and it just seems like it's lingering in the background. I don't have a ton of time in AirSim, but the little time I put into it really surprised me, and it was super clear to me about the opportunity with this game mode. This is not lost on the hardcore sim players. I was really surprised how fast my first air sim video made it into those communities. They are hungry for this game mode to be fleshed out, and I hope this video highlights this. There is a ton of potential, and that's what makes this game mode so frustrating. The snail is powerful, and it would only take a flick of its wrist to take this from a solid game mode into the game mode. If any of you are DCS players and are hungry to build a DCS server, I would imagine that if you were to build the airsim game mode in DCS, it would easily become a top server in DCS overnight. The game mode is just straightforward and fun, and it would honestly work in any airsim. War Thunder is not everyone's favorite topic. It's not my preferred game of play, but I don't really have one game that scratches all the itches. So when I'm in the mood to fly Mirage 3, I really don't have a choice, and I jump into War Thunder. Airsim is my mode of choice, and while it could be better, it is an enjoyable experience. Lastly, if you have not tried it, but you are thinking about doing it, I would strongly recommend to approach War Thunder like DCS. If you play War Thunder to grind, then you have already lost. If you buy a module and just play War Thunder airsim, the same way you just buy a module and play DCS, then you can shield yourself from the rat race of the grind. This is supposed to be a game mode to play and to enjoy, not a labor camp to grind. Let me know your reaction below. I am curious of what people's experience have been in airsim. It has been really interesting to me to see the YouTube channel continue to grow, and with it the Discord. The channel has been able to find a lot of like-minded people, and the Discord has been busy with people playing War Thunder sim lately, and in general I have to say I'm having fun. When I don't have the time to do a longer IL2, DCS or BMS session, I jump into War Thunder for a straightforward, no frills session where I can just vibe. If you have found this video interesting, please subscribe. There's over a 60% chance that you are not actually subscribed, and subscribing actually really helps me, so I would appreciate it. Thanks, and let me know your thoughts below.